All right. Welcome, everybody, to our 44th Darren Tuesday. How y'all doing today?
Doing
Everybody in the
great.
chat piling in. We have our wonderful Frederic Guimont joining us today as our special guest as we dive into illustrative storytelling. And we
Hey,
also
what's
have
up?
Black Knight.
Hello, hello.
Unfortunately, today, our own RH Snow was not able to join us, dealing with some personal stuff out there, unfortunately. But she'll be back next Tuesday. But how are you guys doing today? Frederick, thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell the people what are you working on, what you've been up to, and generally who you are? Introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, I'm a comic book artist based in Quebec City in Canada up here, and I'm sort of warming up some inking, working on some John Byrne pencils that is just kind of a side project. I decided before I get to work on a commission, I kind of want to warm up my inking skills in the day, so I don't go in straight cold. And instead of just doing parallel lines on a blank sheet, I decided I was gonna just warm up using other people's artwork. And this is the first one I've been working on, and I'm sort of building page one of his story here. And it's going to make reproductions. And after that, I'm going to we've got a commission from the Lord Otter that I've been working on, and I'm almost done, almost completed. Like there's just a few details kind of in the door and some minute stuff, like in minor details, I'll be tweaking towards the end here, but it's almost complete. Gonna be completing this tonight for sure. And I've got also another page that's almost complete. This is a
Oh,
alternate
wow.
cover for second printing. Thank you, Morale Officer Gran. And yeah,
No,
so this is for Phenomenal Tales #1 reprint by Patrick Quinlan. So, as many artists do in the Comicsgate community when they do another crowdfunding, they do a reprint of older books, and the reprints get new covers to differentiate the first printing, so you know which edition of the book you got just by the cover.
Yeah, definitely looks wicked, man. That's for sure.
Yeah,
You spent some hours in on that one.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think I've got a few days worth of work on there. It's fun. I like it a lot. It's interesting characters, fun action
Really.
scenes, and it's a real compliment when someone asks you to do a cover of their work. Covers are the best spot in the whole in the whole book. So it's really an honor to be working on that.
Definitely, and that cover looked really great. And
Thanks.
speaking of comics, you are also working on one yourself. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm working on a comic called Retell. Retell #1 is going to be coming out this year. I'm about halfway done. All the pencils are done, half of the inks are done, and I've started putting the files together for the lettering. I've got a colorist who started work on early pages. So that's about where I'm at with that. It's a fun, exciting project. It's kind of got that old school superhero vibe, with the classic hero with good values, something you don't find so much today in modern comics, but hopefully I'm going to bring back that old 90s vibe and have a modern flair to it as well, because he's kind of a cypherpunk. He's living in today's world, but with the futuristic aspect of our technology that not everyone's touching day to day. He, like Batman, who's got his corporation funding his crime fighting tools and tricks. My character Rattel has a whole lot of Bitcoin that he got before he went away to jail for a bit. So he's got a huge fortune as well, but he's kind of anonymous and doesn't have a huge corporation behind him. So interesting take. Takes place in Montreal.
Yes, the Bitcoin superhero. That's going to be a fun one. When that comes out, we're definitely going to take a look at it
oh yes, we
on the
will.
channel. Yes, that's going to be fun. Hey, we'll bring you back on to show it off.
I'd be my pleasure, man, for sure.
Excellent. And obviously, we have Black Knight joining us as always. And how have you been, man? What have you gotten done since the last
Uh,
stream? What are you working on?
well, today was a bit of a um, um, more of a writing day instead of an editing day. As you all know, that's what I do most Tuesdays, bar from writing another poem. But today, not only did I compose another poem, I finished another chapter for my Terran Tuesday bonus story, The Hamster Kid. As you all know, you have probably saw it on my Substack, and I am to keep writing those because people like them. And then I also nearly completed yet another chapter for tomorrow's Warrior Wednesday, and yeah, that was quite the productive day.
Nice, nice. And you're also working on a book coming out as well, correct?
Yes, yes, at least two. Um,
Two books.
at least two. I hope. I hope I can. I'm able to. Excuse me. To complete and publish two this year. Last year it was almost the same number, but the size, at least, of one of these books is a bit smaller, more in the um, ballpark of the Conan-esque stories,
Yeah.
shorter novellas. As you know, I have a series uh, of novellas about my homage, my character that I wrote as an homage to Howard, um, who is almost as let's say barbaric as Conan, almost, as he just wields um, a rifle and a bayonet instead of a Atlantean sword. You know,
All right.
Velin the Luthorian. If you are in the in the on the look for a more pulpy sword, and not Sword and Planet, but more like Sword and Railgun,
Mhm.
old school stuff.
Nice. And where would people be able to pick this up, or where and when?
Well, hopefully, they can already pick up the first two books,
Nice.
the Rebel Song and Valiant in the Bunker of Death on Amazon, and hopefully Valiant Book 3, which has a working title Valiant Death Slayer, should be available this fall, I hope.
Nice. Nice fall release.
Yep.
Excellent. We'll be keeping our eye out for that. And, I think an excellent opening topic to the storytelling potential of illustrations is actually covers. Because you yourself were mentioning you were working on a cover. You showed off an excellent cover. Why don't you tell us what goes into making a good cover, Frederick?
Oh man, it's got to draw the eye, right?
Definitely.
Has nothing to do with the time that you put on it, man. Classically, Todd McFarlane was voted like one of the best covers in the history of comics, like with his Wolverine with his claws out and the reflection of the claws, you see Hulk, right? It's not a huge complicated drawing, but it works so well. It strikes fear, it sets the scene, and it's very dramatic. You don't need a whole lot, but you need to be able to draw the eye to set the scene. And there's differentiating views as well as to the content of the what you see on the cover, because some people get upset if you have a scene on the cover and it's not in the book, right? It's like you can't sell me a scene that's not in the book. You're kind of, but some people don't mind. They're like, oh, it's just kind of, giving you a feel for the story and the drama, and giving you a nice picturesque thing to draw you in and pick up the book. Right, that's the whole point of the cover.
Definitely. I know I would anything on the cover I'd want to at least be represented inside the book. And if it's going to be a scene on the cover, I'd very much like for that scene to come alive. That's for sure. Because you see the cover, you're like, ooh, that looks awesome. Which reminds me of a book I picked up not too long ago, which was a bit of a slow burn. I forget what it was called, which is not a good sign. It was about basically guys in mechs fighting some aquatic creatures. And what made me pick it up was the amazing cover art that just had this huge mech with a gigantic explosion taking up the rest of the cover as a background. So I'm like, okay, this is going to get real. And it's like 3/4 of the book before the aquatic creatures show up. And then the action is heavily contained. And it's really story focused, which wasn't bad as a piece of literature, but I felt like the cover itself promised me something else. I seen a gigantic explosion in the background, and I was thinking, man, I'm getting at least 3 good fight scenes. It's more like 1.5.
Yeah.
1.5. I was like, okay. That was okay. Yeah. So a cover does set expectations, and the writing and what the literature and what's inside the book really have to hold up, because overall, that book wasn't bad. I thought it was well written. I thought the characters were actually really great, but I was going in with one expectation and I got another. It didn't hit me right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You kind of want to respect that part of it too, but sometimes it's the editor that's doing the call, and they got to sell those books, and
Truth.
you got to do what you
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to get them off the
They'll
shelf.
imagine something which is super like flashy and draws in the eye.
Plenty of those. That's what made me pick up a number of illustrative comics that I now own, and what kind of inspired this as well. Being primarily an author, Black Knight, how much illustrations do you actually have reference material, both for yourself as well as in the book, and how do they help you flesh out your book?
Illustrations. Well, I could say that there were themes which inspired me that I picked up from posters. Some of the old movie posters, and they were pretty like nice posters. Very how should I put it? Bombastic, let's say, with monsters and big explosions and tanks and all sorts of stuff. And I loved these as a boy. I even had like a collection of old posters. Some of them were from Soviet war movies, which they were projected here at the cinemas as being the part of the Soviet Empire. So yeah, it's first it's these. Then we had some domestic, very like limited production of a comic book, which was like a hodgepodge of different authors and different artists, various styles. And one of the stories was about, it was like a communist space opera about a team of yes, it's funny, but that's what we had. Like it's you had Star Wars, we had um, glorious communism in space, which
I
doesn't
mean,
work. But
to be fair, Star Trek is a bit communist in space as well.
yeah, but but it's, I mean, it's much better in its delivery. So what I loved about this comic book was the art style was how should you call it? It was like very 50s and 60s art, almost art deco, um, retrofuturism, and even the spaceships had these shapes, and they had guns, like long guns sticking out of them,
Yeah.
like the old battleships, the old World War One and World War Two battleships.
Oh yeah.
And the cosmonauts had flashy armor plating, and some of them had like um, ornate spacesuits. And the weapons, they looked like a mixture of Blake 7 weapons and some World War II weapons, and like of course like everything was given this like a futuristic style. So that was a great inspiration to me. I knew like the story wasn't that interesting, but the art
Yeah.
style was
Yeah.
marvelous.
Yeah.
And later later when I finally had access to like Western comic books, it was they were insanely expensive.
Really.
So yeah, they were crazy expensive, and we were in we weren't in a good economical situation back then. Like the communists caused in like a terrible hyperinflation when they collapsed the regime. And let's say if you could buy like a comic book, like a new comic book, a new release for like a few bucks, like let's say $5, here it would cost like 20 or something. And so I could only look at the covers, um, and not buy them, sadly. But uh, yeah, that's the basics of my um, artsy inspiration. And to this day, I really love the old cars, the shapes of the old cars and the old airplanes, and the ships,
Yeah.
because
The retro stuff.
yeah, the aesthetics are simply like they're like an elixir for my soul.
Ah, nice. Yeah, because I seen a couple of your covers. Maybe we'll bring a few up to
Yeah.
show them off.
Oh,
And
just show the
yeah.
second cover of the second book in the Star Shutter series, the Twin Sons of Carola.
Let me see if
The
we can
ship.
get that.
And I really feel what you mean as well, like by the old style ships, imitating the old regalia ships with cannons on the side. Is today it seems we have way too many people using the same style of ships, and science fiction is kind of like gone into this uni style. Everyone has the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
kind of
uni style with that ugly corpu art.
yeah, yeah.
Is like
It,
ew.
it was cool when they did it for Alien, but now that they're doing the same for every movie, we're kind of ready for something new, I think.
You'll see like this cover. For example, this cover was made by a Japanese artist, um, and it's actually an oil painting, and it represents a warship, quite one of the big warships of the main antagonists, the Tazaran Imperium, is captained by Lord Captain Omasa, and it has become iconic for the series.
This is the correct one, right? The one I'm
Yeah,
showing.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, that's a glorious cover. It's you can see the guns, you can see the casemates with uh, rows upon rows of port and starboard guns, and the turrets on top, and the giant retractable uh, bridge at the center of the ship, and these fins, these armor fins, they also have like tiny turrets on top of them, and there is one giant plasma engine on the back. It's almost like a shark with like a fish, predatory fish with
Yeah,
fins. Yeah,
I can see that.
it's like this guy was awesome. Hope you
Definitely
like
some
it.
good art. And I was going through your stuff. Let's see, bring it up right here. Your books, they definitely each have their own kind of vibe to them. Did you get a separate artist for each of them?
Yeah,
Because this is your
that
first one right here. Why don't you tell us about
yeah.
this one a bit?
Mm, that's the new covers, the line of new covers which was made by Newton Borg, and you can see the the main character's ship at the back, uh, IMS Starshata, and the captain is the one with the flashy uniform on top of his spacesuit, and his energy saber, which is deactivated. Um, and next to him, there is his XO, the uplifted gorilla cat, Katerina, with her rotary railgun, and uh, there is her micro missile launcher. The tubes, you can see them on like sticking up from her shoulder armor. It's a marvelous thing, and the captain, who is Zentari Noble. These people adore flashy stuff. If they can't do something like what he's doing right now, it's um, they feel diminished. They feel bad about themselves.
All right.
It's it has to be lively. It has to be fun, even if they are about to die. They would like to go out in you know with a bang.
Yeah, yeah, and your cover does tell a lot of story, and there's a lot of lore in there. I'm sure you had to go back and forth with the artist a lot. And
uh, yeah, he read the book actually.
there you
um,
go. That
and
helps.
this is the scene, one of the most important scenes, which um, is when the two of them, the captain and his XO, who storm the ship, which is at that time it's uh, being taken by a bunch of wannabe space pirates,
Yeah.
um, and they managed to pull a win by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of just general comic book covers as a whole, and how they kind of capture what the issue is about, because I have a drawer jam packed full of them, and sometimes I feel like I know exactly what they're about just by staring at the cover, and that's to me is like some of the most excellent sort of visual storytelling there is. Especially with the minimal words that are used in comic book story writing. And Frederick, you said you're kind of new to writing. Is there anything you can tell us particularly about the writing that goes into comic books compared into something that's more prose based?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, it's very kind of close to screenwriting in the sense that it's visual writing for the most part. So half of the words you're writing down won't even be read by the reader at the end, because half of them are instructions for the artist for the illustrations when you're not writing for yourself, because I'm writing for myself. But even I give myself like visual instructions for what the scene's going to look like,
Yeah.
or everything I need to remember, because your comics is it's not just illustrations, you're moving a story forward. So you always have to think, okay, what story elements do I need to have in the panels so that everything gets set for the user. You got the setting, you got the characters, you got the movement, and you think kind of halfway between a play, because you got that coming in left side, going out right side aspect of the reading. So you got to think of your characters moving on the page in the sense that the reader is going to be, depending on where they're from, like
Hmm.
people in the West, from left to right. So it's the same as in a theater play, right? And
Yeah.
whereas the Japanese
Yep.
will just invert it, flip it. And I also like to consider like pages, which side of the page are they going to be printed on? This enables you to have like a double page spread that works properly, and you also gives you the incentive to get the page turned. So yeah, I want to time kind of little mini cliffhangers at the bottom of the right page, so the reader is like propelled to turn the page and keep turning and keep turning. So you can strategically place your events like a beat uh, on the page turns, and think of your scenes in sets of 2 pages, or cut them up in portions of 2 pages and things like that. So that's what's mostly different about comics from both movies and books at the same time, because they're neither one or the other, but they have elements of both at once. So
Yeah.
that's what makes them very interesting, to me at least.
Definitely, and that art you're working on looks quite amazing as well.
Yeah,
I think
man, John Byrne, a lot of detail.
yes, yes, and I've seen some of your work, and it's just I think it's just as detailed. I'm sure as an artist you can probably find some
Yeah,
differences between them.
I try
So
to.
this is a cover you're working on, correct?
Yeah, this is a cover for Phenomenal Tales #1 reprinted edition.
Looks fantastic. I love the colors, the use of black. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
And I think I can recognize the inspiration for that one gun. It looks like an Uzi.
Oh, this one's an Uzi. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got the handle a little bit too far back. I should have had it further up there, but it is a Uzi here. And you got the AK-47. I still need to finish drawing the mag. Is it the magazine, or is it the what's the proper term?
Yeah, the
I
magazine.
think
Yeah,
magazine. Yeah. Are
magazine.
you also going to be doing the coloring on this one?
No, I'm going to be thankfully passing it on to.
Thankfully.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
I'm.
lot of work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I mean,
insane.
I,
People
I
don't realize that
no, it is.
when
Yeah,
they see the final product. It's like, yeah, probably one person did all of that. No, no, no.
Yeah, coloring's kind of like an art in itself. I think I mentioned it at least a number of times that I'll see the black and white line art and looks fantastic, and then once the coloring is done, it doesn't look as hot.
yeah. That's a bad sign for the colorist, but it does happen. I mean, some artwork is just so beautiful in black and white. I mean, um, Frank Miller showed us with Sin City how you could do an absolute masterpiece where you can't just add color to it. it was made to be absolute black and white with little splotches of color just to enhance certain scenes and have a visual impact. And no, man, it goes to show, regardless of what you choose to exploit, it's always in how you approach it. You can make it sing, even if it's like a limited palette of black and white. It's a lot you
Definitely.
could do.
Yeah,
It comes down to how much you understand the medium, right? How much you understand what you're working on, and the limits are often what drives creativity, because if you've got this and this limits where you're like, okay, well, I got to push this, I've got to go try to get the same effect that I'm used to getting, but I've got to use this instead, so I'm going to try to stack the odds in my favor by
hmm
exploiting everything that this can do, this limited set can do.
yes. I really like that in creativity, and I see that a lot in a variety of the illustrative literature that I kind of purchased throughout the years. I like collecting older literature, and I got plenty that is illustrative. I showed plenty of that off in your stream, which is after this. I don't think you mentioned it. Why don't you tell us about your stream real quick, since you're
Yeah,
talking about illustrations?
I've got a
Yeah.
little humble art stream that I do every Tuesdays at 8 Eastern, with my friends as co-hosts, you amongst them, along with Billy Bob Sack. Lord Otter joins us from time to time. And Wrangler from Frequency Studios is there. And we just, talk it up about what's new and happening in comics, books, video games, pop culture stuff. And yeah, kind of have a critical eye towards those things. And we're all creators in some way, so it's kind of fun to get everybody's ideas on different topics and their viewpoints.
Definitely. And I'll be showing off a particular comic book that has recently entered my collection of literature over there after this stream. I do have a few pieces to show for this stream, because we are talking about the story potential of images, which is essentially, I think, reaching near full potential when it comes to story, is when you mix the prose and the images together. Because I definitely ran across many fantastic pieces of um, visual storytelling that have captivated me. There's a few I wanted to show off, but unfortunately couldn't find for my collection. But one of them that I do have, let me go ahead and switch this over real quick to my book cam so we can take a look here and make sure that my lighting set up okay, so there's not too much shadows
You mean
here.
your sandwich cam?
My sandwich cam. I think this is the sandwich cam. There's a little sandwich on.
No, that's your face cam.
No, that's the sandwich cam. This is the book cam.
Yeah.
And I mentioned
Yeah.
this book a number of times. It's my favorite book. I hope everybody gets a chance.
Oh,
This one recently came in.
Oh, this
Not
is
too
the new
long
edition?
ago.
No, this is the one you showed us last week, is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. This is a printed copy, a scanned copy of a book that was released in the early 1900s, in late 1800s. I forget the exact year, but it's called The Wanderings of an Elephant Hunter, and it follows an elephant hunter and his journeys throughout Africa around that time period. And the reason I wanted this one is because it has all the illustrations that were mentioned in the other version of the book I have, but they're just not there. And right here is an entire glossary of all the images. In fact, the glossary begins here. It goes all the way down with the names of every single image in the order for which you're going to run into them in. And it's about 3 pages long with a grand total of 177 images. That's the reason I hunted down this book. And man, was it worth it. I had to order it all the way from India to get it.
oh.
But as soon as we open it
Is
up,
this pencil art? This is pencil art.
this is many of these were sketched by
Yes.
the author slash hunter himself. And this is a representation of a trap they used to stop menacing elephants in Africa. This is a trap the Africans used, and it's described here in detail. And on the very next page, you get some more excellent artwork from the author, and right here is a an elephant ripping up a tree from the ground. They're very strong animals, and a gigantic spearhead or javelin that's about 400 pounds that they use to
Mm.
take out the rogue elephants with. Yeah, so that's very heavy.
They
And
wouldn't use like tiny.
oh no.
They won't work.
Yes, and the first three chapters are all about essentially, and this is a bit sensitive material. I understand doesn't bother some people, but this is from another time of a another time in another country of somebody who very much was a hunter. The first three chapters are how to take out an elephant appropriately, and all these are instructional pieces on how to do so. Well, right here we have pretty much a breakdown of what you can expect if you use particular rifles with particular grams of power, and just an entire visual breakdown that's not found in most versions of this book. This book has been reprinted over a dozen times, and the majority of these images are not available. A portion of me wants to save up and buy the multiple $100 original print of this book just so I could have them, because this is very much a scan job. But you can see how much images there are throughout all of this, and all of these are being described in the text as they go, and then you get a full-blown image of the description itself and a minor description down here as well. And this is throughout the book. Like here's a hand drawing of a rogue elephant right here that's about to charge. That's a drawing based off of what the author thought of in his mind. And some of these are actually photos. I think this one may actually be a photo itself. You can see a bit of these scanned lines. But each of these is a descriptor. Each of these is something that's very difficult to find. This book, I had to essentially buy it from a shop in India and wait 20 something days before it arrived. Um, but this is essentially what I like to collect, and the sort of beauty that you're going to find in literature and original editions that you're not going to get in a lot of different places. And as you can see, I'm just flipping the pages, and there's art piece after art piece in here. Many of them hand drawn. This one is definitely hand drawn. I can bring it up a bit more.
The closest thing I can remember in recent times was the Lord Otter's book.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a friend of the channel, Lord Otter, mentioned that he himself wanted to add in more images and visual representations. And
this is going to be one of them.
yes, and it inspires me as well for the future of my own literature and the importance of adding in various forms of images. And
Interesting.
like I said, this book has over 100 many different beautiful images, representations of the past, images of warriors from different African tribes. I believe this is one of them, because this gentleman trotted across all of Africa.
It's
This
funny
over-
because you said warriors, but I heard lawyers, so I was
Lawyers.
imagining the lawyers from different African tribes and all of them gathering.
Yeah, so there's a lot of beauty here, and was when I got my hands on this piece of literature, I must have spent maybe 3 hours just going through it, image per image, just looking at them, because once again, not easy to find. I really had to go out of my way to find this book, but it was worth. It was definitely worth it, and these are representations of Africa in the late 1800s.
So how did you end up finding it? Because obviously you didn't search for it on eBay if you say that it was difficult to find, right?
Yes. Um, Essentially, I had to go to Abe Books to hunt this one down. If anybody knows anything about Abe Books, it's where you can find a lot of just booksellers from around the world just peddling their wares. I buy a lot of old school books from there. And I found a seller that was selling this one, and I didn't really know because they didn't have an image. But I just had to roll the dice on it. They said it was 100%, and a one for one scan job of the original book. And it is. It is. The paper's a little on the thinner side, but for the price, overall, I believe it was $40. You get yourself a nice leather bound book, and it's legible. The images are all beautiful, and it's probably just my greatest purchase so far of the year. And I've made some more right ones when it comes to the literary pursuits.
Nice.
Definitely, definitely. I when it comes to the purchases of books, the ones with hand drawn images and the like are something that always captivate me, and I'm always looking for. And it's huge. It's like my side hobby right here. This is where my expendable funds go, is for the books. I'm a nerd like that.
I can respect that.
Yeah, you're a book nerd. Like you're a bigger book nerd than all of us.
Well, for
It's
particular
like
books, I got a taste for the safari books, if you will. Safari adventure.
nice. It's like I have some rare stuff which did have illustrations in it, but these are some of the early books from the like choose your own adventure kind.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
and there was like a period here after the fall of the regime when a lot of books, which of course were censored, and art, including art, um, which was censored, made way here. And there was a wave of indie authors, like new authors, who wrote, um, and not just wrote. There were like comic magazines. Um, the sadly, the industry in the beginning, like the publishing industry, frowned upon the comics, and they quickly destroyed them after like one or two issues, even though they were widely popular. They just didn't want them to survive. And yeah, I have like a pile of choose your own adventure books here on the shelf, and
Really?
many of them had like nice, really nice illustrations, cool art.
Oh
There
yeah.
was one. There was one, I think, with beautiful pencil art, sketches, which they were, I think, just like you mentioned earlier, they weren't colored, and they shouldn't have been colored, because the magic would vanish, would go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have these still, and these were banned books essentially.
No, they weren't banned. I mean, they were like their kind was banned before the fall of the regime,
Yeah.
but after that, like the market was open and flooded with all sorts of stuff.
Uh-huh. I guess for any new viewers, why don't you tell them kind of like the time period for which we're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the 80s to the 90s, um, and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
That's the period.
In like the Soviet Union, correct?
Well, that we were part of the empire, but they're not actually physically part of the Soviet Union. Although some of our leaders were quite keen of like bootlicking the regime and surrendering what was left of our sovereignty here. just like the guys in Yugoslavia did, and Czechoslovakia and
Yeah.
whatnot, and Romania. But at the very least, we had like some bits of sovereignty left, even though these were under the dictator's control.
Uh-huh.
The glorious leader, you know, that's uh, that's what many people called him, and in later years in jest because he proved himself to be a fool, um, just like most of the installed puppets of the Moscow communist regime. Many were proven to be just useful idiots. Yeah, yeah. But I'm from Bulgaria, and we had enough censorship, and then banned art and banned music and banned clothes and banned haircuts, like it
Yeah.
banned everything. It's
Wow.
enough. It's enough.
There were banned haircuts.
Yep.
How does that work? Like, what haircuts were banned?
My parents told me about it. Like there were banned haircuts in the 70s. Apparently something to do with the Beatles.
Huh.
I wasn't around then. It's like they're like, do you know there were banned haircuts? And I'm like, what the fuck? What?
No
Why?
bowl cuts.
No bowl cut, right?
Banned clothes, banned types of clothing, etc. So
Wow.
they would actually, the cops would uh, arrest them and beat them, and even choke them to death with their clothes, with the clothes. So they would like strangulate them with their clothes.
Shit.
Yep.
Wow. But you don't hear about that.
Oh no, no. Well, it wasn't real. It wasn't real socialism.
Of course. Why don't you tell us about the art back then? What was the art like in the socialism?
Uh, well, most of it was modernist schlock, really ugly, and brutalist architecture.
Yeah. Yeah. Brutalist,
Mm,
minimalist.
yeah, and what you see from these times, which is like actually nice. This is made by the older artists, most of whom were given. They were released from the camps, from the prisons, because there were no artists actually. So they were released and they were ordered to draw in like these beautiful propaganda posters from the earlier days. And this is like neo-communist realism, it's called, I think. And this is perhaps some of the good stuff, because it was made by real artists.
Yeah.
And
Damn,
you can
if you're getting out of prison, the government says, "Okay, we're finally taking you out of the gulag. You got to paint some propaganda posters." Dude, I bet those artists were gonna paint the most beautiful propaganda
Oh yeah,
posters
yeah.
to stay out
They
of
did.
jail.
They did. Because some of them, their families were still in the gulags.
Yikes.
And you can see similar stuff in North Korea, of today. They have insanely grandiose, beautiful paintings of their leaders, of like some ensemble paintings of workers, scientists, soldiers, and whatnot. And these, we just can't lie to ourselves. These do indeed look beautiful. They are used for um, nefarious purposes, but they are beautiful. The art is beautiful. So mostly that's what we have back in the day, and there were a lot of artists who were swept in by this like modernist wave, and pretty much everything that the communists promoted was either like brutalist architecture or modernist art and sculpture. Even the monuments, there were monuments um, which were built to commemorate certain triumph of the Communist Party, which they look like, these absolutely look like they've been taken from an alien planet somewhere, and bar the letters of like of our language, which they have like something written on the monument. It's just that signifies the fact that it was made by human hand. That was basically it. Of course, we still had some of the older artists who would paint beautiful paintings, and these were, of course, under the term of the guild, of the Artist Guild of the Communist Party. And basically, they had to say what they were drawing, what kind of a painting they were like, what was the idea, what was the composition, and
Only
given,
authorized paintings
yeah,
allowed.
oh yeah, pretty much. And I know that some of them had like hidden stashes of paintings which they would never uh, have said, disclosed that they were making them. And in later years, like in the 80s, before the regime fell, they had uh, like not that strict a control over them, and they could make what they wanted pretty much. But that was like far too late. I feel that uh, these years, like these many years, have suffocated quite a lot of artists here, and especially um, painters, um, and also poets and writers. Not sure about sculptures, but I think there were like a few of them who got shot, um, because they weren't keen on making statues for the party brass, glorifying them, like something similar to the statues of the glorious leader in North Korea, or Stalin back in the day. It's like, yeah. So we had stuff, but it was party approved.
Yes, definitely an interesting subject that I'm glad you dove into because some of that sounds downright scary.
Well, gulags are scary.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm sure there's got to be at least one comic book out there depicting it. I'll have to get my hands on somewhere out there. The Gulag Archipelago comic book edition.
There's actually
I'm not
a
sure.
there's a comic book that was made by someone here in Quebec that went to North Korea. I think it's called Pyongyang, simply the name of the city he visited.
Oh, interesting. I assume it's kind of like just what he experienced.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I haven't read it, but I'm aware of it.
Nice, nice. We got Nikolai joining us in the chat, asking how you doing, or how are you, Black Knight DSR. Thumbs up across the board. Thumbs
Yeah,
up across the board. Yes.
pretty much.
Yeah, I am doing well today as a sandwich. As you can see, I myself am a visual representation of storytelling with my sandwich lips and my sandwich eyes that are impossible not to get lost in. Just look at them. Yeah,
Yes.
Especially around
Look
December
at the
time.
sandwich eyes and imagine the epic sandwiching of sandwiches everywhere.
the people of the sandwich. Yes, well, I myself am actually looking into getting more visual representation in my literature. I actually recently commissioned an artist to make an 8-page comic of one of my short stories that will hopefully be done not too long because it's black and white, not going for the whole color thing. I really dig black and white comics a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what I'm exploring right now, which was another incentive to actually dive into this excellent conversation. Because personally, I've always loved good images that are well done. I'm actually going to just blow up yours right now, Frederick, because that looks extremely detailed. I personally don't know how you can sit there for hours on end just penning all that.
Well, it's you actually kind of get lost in it at some point, and it's like doodling on the telephone. I know that's kind of probably a lost art for the kids listening, but I just get lost in listening to the conversation basically, and I just let my pen move along and do one detail to the next. As you can see, there's no real strategy. I'm not like going top down like a printer or anything. I'm just like going from one to the other, like, oh, these are in the same angle. Let me see how much, oh, this looks interesting. Let me try to get the outline of this, and let me do a little bit of that. And you kind of have to be lost in time, stop looking at the
Yeah.
clock to, because you got to be patient with these things. And yeah, eventually at the end of it, you get something almost done, and then you got to do the final sprint, and you're like, okay, I just need to get this one done and this one done and almost done, and then it's done for the first time, and then you notice something else. Oh no, I thought it was done, but I forgot about this,
Oh boy.
and then it's done for about 5, 6 times,
Uh,
and then
what
eventually you abandon it.
Yeah,
it's
that
done enough.
reminds us. That reminds us of the different stages of a draft. It's like, yes, I found all the typos. No, I didn't. Or let me add a sentence here. I can tweak this description a little bit. Oh, no, I can add this line of dialogue. And it's done. And then it's not done.
Yeah, yeah. And
Now,
there's a
what's
thing
the
as well, like when you do get a reward when you're done with a piece and it looks to your liking, you sort of get lost in just looking at it. It's like time stops and you're no longer working on it, you're just admiring it. And
yeah,
sometimes, man, you can admire a piece for hours. It's kind of insane.
that one I do know. I mentioned earlier I was hunting down a comic book I could not find, which had a had this full page spread that was just breathtaking that I wanted to show off, but unfortunately could not find. But what is the most difficult part about bringing one of these illustrations to life?
Oh man, the most difficult part? Not especially when we're talking inking, it's just not messing up. Like there's always going to be a mistake here or there. Try to fix it best you can. Uh, I think it's if we're talking about inking, and I'm still learning. I'm still very new at the craft of inking, but I think it's a lot of confidence in your movement. When you
Mm,
do a line, you got to know the line you're doing. You don't just hesitate on the page. It's it's very much akin to a samurai or Japanese writing. The samurai would practice calligraphy because it would leave a trace of the movement on the page. And inking's kind of like that. You want to have a swift, clear move and to try to have a most beautiful line that you can. A lot of times in comics, you want to have a varying width line. It makes it for very stimulating uh, line art, and it also gives width, dynamism, and yeah, line weight is super important in comics.
Mm. All right. Well, for the audience at home, can you describe what inking is?
Yeah, so inking is what I've been doing here. It's basically I printed out somebody's pencils on blue lined here. So blue is very pale, so that when I scan it, it won't show up on the scanner. And inking is just using uh, an ink pen and give it the final line. So this is the final drawing over the pencil that serves as a blueprint, literally a blueprint in this case. Uh, but yeah, your pencils is to guide you. Okay, here's the shape, here's what it looks like. But the inking is the very final line that's going to be end up printed in the
Yeah.
book. And this is going to one that's going to get the color on the back if it's a colored book. But these lines are the ones that stay forever. So it's really the final step in drawing, right? You draw in pencil to get your ideas formed on the page so you don't make mistakes later. But the final line that's almost a performance because what you lay on the page is what sticks. You can theoretically fix it, but the closer you are to perfection each time,
Yeah.
the faster it goes, the better it looks. Because even if you can fix something really well, it's never as beautiful as getting it right on the first movement. You know?
Ah, very interesting. So I guess a lot could go wrong in the process.
Yeah, it all. I mean, it does. You get mistakes on every page has mistakes, and you try to because it's not about making the a page without mistakes. It's
Yeah.
about making a really really cool page that has a couple of mistakes, but you don't notice them because it looks so awesome. It looks so cool. You have such a life in the drawing. Because if you just draw everything kind of stale over it, just one line, okay, a line here, it doesn't have life. It won't stand out with the shapes. It won't have as much weight to it. There's something that the inker gives in the final stage that isn't there yet with just the pencils.
And the inker is not always the illustrator, the one initially drawing the image, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So mostly in American comics, you have the steps are broken up with different people because you can do a lot more. You can get your book out faster if the guy who's penciling is not the guy inking. And some people are better at some things. Like I'm better at penciling, but I want to ink my own work because it's a way for me to get better at inking as well. I want to keep growing that curve and improving. But if you want to be fast, you get a team. Each member of the team is perfected in his specific task, right? You got that. You can even have somebody whose job is it to do the layout. So you have the writer, the layout guy, the final penciler, the inker. Then you got the letterer, you got the colorist, and the colorist has his flatter. So you can have quite a team of creatives working on a book, and that's not counting the editor, project lead, all that stuff. So
Ah,
a lot of talent can go into a book.
it's like an illustrative assembly line.
It is, man. It really is. It's pop art, right? It's popular art. Andy Warhol was kind of inspired by things like this. Lichtenstein literally stole from comics and
Really?
repainted on canvas and called it modern art,
Wow.
and never never paid the artist he stole from.
Of
You
course.
know,
Well, it wouldn't be stealing if he did.
that's right. That's right. But Pablo Picasso was open about stealing stuff as well. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Many good artists are. That's where a lot of inspiration comes from in a lot of regard.
I think what Pablo said is good artists steal. No, good artists borrow, great artists steal.
Ah, right. There you go. Don't yeah, don't tell some artists that.
Yeah, but we're talking about artists when we're not talking about Hollywood hacks.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Very true. Which, frankly, movies are in themselves a real great visual storyteller. If not near the best, frankly, I think this may be controversial, but the much more hyper realistic video games, I think, are probably near the greatest form of
Yeah.
indirect storytelling, because direct storytelling would be to almost rip control out of a player's hand, but indirectly, I think they have a lot of great representations of um, amazing stories in some of the games. Like I played one when I was young that actually inspired a lot of my writings today. What was it called? The name is just not coming to me right now, but the story blew me away. I'm not necessarily sure it would have the same effect on me, but I wasn't expecting to have a strong story coming from of something I bought to play on Xbox on the weekends while I lived on the ranch. Um, but it was a story that captivated me, and the visuals and the art style that they went with all sort of just enthralled me and pulled me in. Um, so the visuals, in a lot of sense, I think um, they help captivate in a way that a masterful wordsmith could captivate. And I think if you were to bring those two together, you can create some magnificent arts. Because I know here in the West, we don't take kind of like I guess what we call comic book storytelling or the comic book medium too seriously. But when we go overseas, we see that's completely different. And when we even dig into the past, we see that's completely different. Because I myself recently ended up accidentally purchasing a comic that I thought was a magazine, but it's a magazine that was placed into comic book format because it was initially for comic book format. It's a wartime comic, but in the West we started publishing illustrative magazines because of what was called the comics book code, which severely restricted what particular artists and writers could actually produce in the comic book realm.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a bit about French comic books? Because I know storytelling in them is on a different level compared to a U.S. based comic book.
Oh, totally. And the way you make comics is different as well. Like, first of all, you'll have smaller creative teams. It's used to be like just the writer and the artist, period. The artist would do everything, like layouts, pencils, his own inking, his own coloring. He would do the lettering within the art. So the lettering was part of the art simply. Whereas American comics, the letterer would paste the bubbles over the
Yeah.
original art. Nowadays, we do a lot of that digitally, but yeah, French artists, much larger original art and larger format final book. And books have as much, are considered with as much respect as other just printed, written books, right? Because there was never this difference that happened in the United States. There was never this scandal that was started by Frederic Guimont. This never happened in Europe, so they're just like books. You have some that are for children, but you have some that are clearly for adults. You have some that are detective types. And when I say for adults, I don't mean pornography. I just mean more mature storylines. And it's a whole variety, like a huge variety of artists and styles. And Europe is large as well. You have French artists, you have Belgian artists, you have Italian artists, and now they're borrowing more and more from other cultures. Like, yeah, it's been a while that we've been influenced. Like at least one or two generations have been influenced from manga and Americans, so they're bringing those styles as well into their own art too. So it's interesting because as much as I grew up reading bande dessinée, the term for European comics, I was much more into American comics because American comics were much less perfect. Like the American artists can't draw as well as the Europeans. Europeans are classically trained from a younger age. They draw from observation way more, and they're just way better classically trained. But American artists, they have this don't give a fuck attitude, man, especially embodied in Todd McFarlane, who would just be like, nah, I don't care that you used to do this. I want to do it my way. I'm going to make it even better than you guys. I'm going to sell
Oh,
more issues. And I'm just going to break the mold and do things people aren't doing or you're not allowed to do, but I'm going to do them so well that I'm gonna get away with it, And I think the Europeans are way more conservative. Like for a long time, they would stick to just the boring Tintin type panel displays. It's just like
Yeah.
equal strips laid out horizontally. And for a long time, they didn't break that mold. And some of them would, a lot of time, the originals were done in two parts. They were so large that the top half of the page was on one piece of paper and the bottom half was on another piece of paper. So that prohibits them from going over one another unless you stick them together with like a double page spread you're doing in the States. So yeah, there's all sorts of different variations like that. Um, Variations in style. You have very Disney-fied stuff for kids,
Yeah.
as well as dark, very mature, very detective noir stuff. It's horror, and it's an incredible source of just a variety of books, especially through the years.
Truth. I myself actually ended up with a bunch of Chinese comic books that well, they were published for the West, but they were initially published in China and then translated over. And they were very heavy on using airbrushing techniques
Oh,
in for the coloring. So they used a lot of airbrush. So those are very popular technique that they used over there, and it's you can definitely see it in a lot of the art forms. So I have to hunt some of those down because they got some really great covers. I just don't remember where I particularly left them in my room full of treasures and sandwiches.
oh yeah, man.
Indeed. We have a. Oh,
Yeah,
you go ahead, Black Knight. I was going to read
I
this.
I remember a few years ago I went on a quest to find a gun, which I saw drawn in one of the older anime movies. Was like uh, longer format OVA. I think about um, what was that about? I think it was like supernatural stuff, and there were hunters who hunted ancient spirits and zombies and stuff. But of course, there were Nazis, and the Nazis they had uh, like modernized gear and uniforms, and they were using it like this. It, the aesthetics of the gun were, to me, interesting. And at first, I assumed that the gun was just they just like approximated the shape of some submachine gun, or an assault rifle. But I got obsessed because it was like I like guns. I like guns a lot. I don't have guns, but I like them, and I studied a lot about guns. So I was like, I might have seen this somewhere, and it took me 3 years, but I found it. And it all started from the drawing of a team of Japanese animators who made this anime, um, and I found the gun that was eventually I discovered that it was like a limited series submachine gun, called Water MPL, which was made in the 50s, I think. And this is what art, like this is one of the powers of art, uh, that though they may you may think that it's perhaps just something that a painter or an animator had imagined, created, but it actually it was based on a real piece of tech, a real weapon. So that's
Yeah, the Japanese have a great attention to detail. It's surprising. You said this was from a
Yeah.
manga, or did I
that was from the longer anime
anime? Right, right.
OVA. Yeah, I forgot the name, but it was like dealing with supernatural stuff.
The Japanese in themselves have basically taken over the industry of comic book storytelling in a way with their mangas, even like grossly outselling U.S. based comic book publishers over here in the West. It's very interesting how they dominate that to the point where their industry is world renowned now, even though that they themselves have some controversy with the I guess with the amount of work one gets done when producing, because you've been working on the same piece this entire time. I can't imagine a manga artist who has to produce like 80 plus pages
Oh, well,
in
they're not as
every,
detailed. Yeah, yeah, for
yeah, I'm
sure.
sure.
Manga, first of all, they're even smaller. The Japanese have the smallest pages of all the different cultures who do comics. And yeah, generally just less detail for the most part. There are definitely artists who are the exception. Like people are going to say, yeah, but look at Berserk, it's filled with, yeah, yeah, that one's an amazing piece of art. But I mean, just the majority of the stuff, it's not as dense. You can have like buildings and, but yeah, they're very technical. They're very good, and they also split up tasks. They're even more. They even have like have it split within more tasks than the Americans. Like you'll have background artists, which I don't hear a lot of that very often from the American side. Like I don't know people who have assistants who just do background artists in the U.S. It's not common, but in Japan, it's like a super common trait. Like people who just draw buildings, they just draw the background stuff, and you have other artists who are good at people and just they drew the faces and the characters.
Okay, so they'd be hyper focused on particular subject matter.
Yeah, yeah. Japanese are also very good at how do you call it? Assembly line, right?
Yeah, assembly line production. Not bad though. It gets the job done,
Yep,
and it's definitely taken over here in the West. That's for sure.
it
I know that
has.
the American comics, like they gotten so bad that I think that some of them publish to sales in the dozen. Sometimes you're talking about comics and fans and
Oh man, it's crazy. Like the best-selling comics are doing numbers that would have been canceled in the 90s. So,
oh, that's not good. That's
no,
not
it's
good.
not.
That's not
It's
good for
not.
visual storytelling in the West.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
a lot of the publishers are still doing some of that woke stuff. Like I saw
yeah.
something still this week: a new superhero whose power is making things disappear. So the villains just pop, disappear. That's it.
Uh,
Story's over.
Yeah,
oh,
that's
so
very.
original.
It's the power of cancel culture.
Ah,
That's pretty weak. That's a weak. That's how not to write a. How,
lame,
And
lame.
the character who has those powers is an overweight black woman.
In a wheelchair.
No, no, I don't think they went all the way. Yeah.
There was like correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one who was, I think, um, pregnant. Uh, it was like a pregnant superhero who was also a black woman.
oh,
Like
hmm. I'm not
it
surprised.
didn't sell. It didn't sell well.
I
I'd
wonder
imagine.
why.
I'd imagine. But yeah,
Uh,
that hopefully there'll be a comeback in the mainstream comic book scene. But if not, in the indie scene, there's a lot of great stuff being published. Some projects you're working on yourself there, Frederick, and we're going to go ahead and begin our wrap ups. Let's start off with you, Black Knight. Why don't you give us your final thoughts and what are you working on? Where can people find you?
uh, Well, my final thoughts are that we need more. We need more, especially indie art, because that's where the resurgence, the reconstruction, the regeneration will come.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not going to be from the mainstream schlock walkies, as they themselves call themselves. It's, I mean, they don't get it. That's like um, it reminds me of that saying about the frog in the well that knows nothing of the sea. And in their case, they will say that the sea is like a right wing conspiracy theory. But apart that nonsensical things, um, we, as especially with authors, and I myself as like an amateur poet, I'm quite inspired by art, in its many forms, visual art, um, be it drawing, painting, animation, sculpture. Even I I'm always hungry for more, and it will forever keep. There will be no time in my life when I won't be inspired by visual art. And as for where you can find me, you can find my newest stories on my Substack, which is uh, the Black Knight, Substack.com, the Black Knight. My weekly stories, which are brand new. This is the uh, one that I began posting and writing and posting for Terran Tuesday, which is Hamsterkin, about an adorable, uh, uplifted hamster from the Star Shutter universe, who is a soulless tourist. That's all that I'm going to say. And as so far as my published books, all 12 of them, you can find them on Amazon, including the 7 books out of 10 so far published from the Star Shutter series. The 2 Velin novelettes, which are my Conan-esque books, and it's also set in the Star Shutter series, the Star Shutter universe, and the 2 anthologies, the short story collections, Mandate of Sword and Railgun, and The Blood of Tyrants. And lastly, but not least, that's my brand new fantasy, pure fantasy, old school novella, which is titled Lord of Bones. You can also find it on Amazon. And as I mentioned earlier, I am working on at least 2 new books this year, but let's see what happens. Things should happen.
Roger on that one. You're always juggling a bunch of different stuff, my man. I never know what you're going to produce next, but you're always producing every single week. So definitely check out his Substack, people, if you want to stay entertained. Because when I go there, I don't even know what I'm going to find next. But with that said, Frederick, give us some
Yes.
final thoughts where people can find you and what you're working on.
Final thoughts. Visual storytelling is always what attracted me. Like ever since I've seen people draw for the first time in my life, and just things come to life with a couple of lines on a page, it's always fascinated me how you can convey worlds and characters with just a few lines. And if you're into comics, if you want to find out more of what I'm working on, visit ratelcomic.com. Forward address is imakecomics.com. It'll take you there. and you can follow the progress. So you can see samples of the pages and get a little bit more info, and as well as my media links, social media, and ways to follow what I'm working on, what I'm doing. So yeah, thank you very much. And also, I have a I also have a YouTube show coming up in half an hour on the channel with my namesake. So be sure to tune into that and subscribe and continue the conversation with James on that channel.
Oh yeah, and I have a few extra things to show off there on the book cam. But with that said, thank you everybody for joining us this fantastic evening or whatever time it is where you are. We always appreciate each and every single one of you stopping by. But we're going to go ahead and respect your time and call it quits right here. Thanks for joining us. Share this with your friends. Shout it at the rooftop. Subscribe if you're watching on the playback. Leave a comment. But we are out of here. Arrivederci, everybody. Bonjour.